Welcome everybody. We're back for another episode of PCH Pit. As hopefully you caught our post kickoff video, but this video is looking at some pre-event Dalton, some preview of the event, how build season went. But to say a little bit about the show, before we get started, we have to make the usual disclaimer. Any views or opinions shared on the show are solely that of the individual contributor and do not reflect the views of PCH Pit, any FRC team, First, Georgia First, or any of their affiliates and sponsors. So the idea behind the show is to serve as an FRC talk show that focuses primarily on the Peachtree District. We're going to be talking about a variety of topics, so don't be surprised if you see us drop some hot takes. Ultimately, we're hoping to provide some entertaining and engaging discussions. We'll do some host introductions. We'll start with Kyle here on my left.
Hi, I'm Kyle. I am a MC for Georgia First. I am also a scouting mentor here with 1746. I'm ready to be canceled today.
My name's Kellen. I'm a mentor with 1746 Auto. We're filming here at our shop.
I'm Brian Carlson, a mentor with 6829 Ignite Robotics.
And my name is Anupam Goli. I am the head coach for Team Auto and the engineering teacher here at Forsyth Central High School.
All right, with that said, we'll move right into our content. So first off, before we get to the juicy stuff for what happened in week one, we're going to talk a little bit about the build season. So how did it go?
Ours went pretty well. I mean, we were virtual for some of it, but we, with new students and all the stuff we did with grits and July heat, we had students that are ready to go. We had a very successful build season. We'll see how that translates on the field, but as far as our students goes, I thought it was really great.
That's good news. We had some interesting I think we talked about this on the last episode a little bit, but we only had like 12 students last year for the 21 season.
Yeah.
Anupam could talk a little bit more about what that transition's been like.
Yeah, so last year with the COVID pandemic going on, we were only able to have a couple of new students come in, and with all the virtual events, there wasn't a huge amount of excitement. But this year we were able to hit the ground running with our recruitment, and we somehow got over 40 team members, so we're sitting at something above 70% rookies to FRC, and most of them are rookies to robotics in general. So going through this build season, there was a lot of like training on the fly, like kids coming in not knowing how to run a part on a 3D printer, our seniors stepping in to teach them how to use our machines. So it was not only us learning how to build a robot, but the whole team in general just learning how an FRC works and how a team structure works for this competition.
And that's where I think out of necessity, this has been the most participative our rookie members of the team have ever been. Generally, it's all right, fresh sophomores, juniors, seniors have an idea of what's going on, so they're taking the reins. They might have some of the freshmen involved here and there. But out of necessity, we have freshmen. We have a group of freshmen that's are the only group of people working on our climbing mechanism, which has been interesting. I've been leading up that design group. Yeah. But it's awesome to see them thrown in the deep end, and I think that's going to pay a lot. We're going to see a lot of benefit from that in years to come because we're going to have a group that got a lot of experience their first year and have 3 full years to follow.
And same with our programming team. Like most of them are not only rookies but freshmen to high school, and so seeing them kind of seeing our mentors really teach them how to first set up their environments, then walking them through like the build, deploy, debug process, and teaching them version control. This has been phenomenal to see, and I'm hoping that this turns into something amazing in the next few years. Brian, have you had any kind of cool stories or experiences with your rookies?
Yeah, so with our July heat and grits, we're using that to actually go through and like we needed to fix stuff on our bot, and that was our learning opportunity. So the students got really engaged, and so we have rookies doing more than we've had in the past, been more involved and more capable, right? So having those 2 off-seasons events were really motivated. Like we gotta get better, do competition. So that was a great experience for them. Plus, there's a deadline, like you have to get it done by that time. So we have several different sub teams. One of them is captained by a rookie. Our strategy lead is a rookie and doing really well. So yeah, it's been a really good season. As a matter of fact, on 1771, we'll show something later on. Their programmer just started programming back in about June, and you'll see what they did in Autumn. And so I think in general, even though people have more rookies on their team, I'm seeing positive signs that they're being more engaged and more impactful.
Yeah, I think it definitely taking like a year to do virtual, or having that virtual year and coming back to in person. I feel like because there was that year-long gap, just us who've been around and even the rookies were getting a little bit more energized and excited to be back at and doing a new game and in-person events.
Definitely. And it's interesting, coming on board with 1746 just recently, going through a scouting session to kind of teach like the basics of how scouting goes and everything else. It was really invigorating and kind of see the excitement from them of asking all these different questions of how competitions work. What's the dynamic? How do we work with other teams? How do we really take in all the different things of the competition? So it's just been exciting because I haven't really seen that ever in my first career. A lot of more times than not, I'm working with vets, and so this is the first time where like the majority have been like rookies, and it's a reinvigorating kind of feeling where you're just like it's a fresh type of excitement.
That and with the head count limits that were I think very appropriate then for July Heat and Grits, I think it still limited the amount of students on teams that have had event exposure.
Sure.
So it's really exciting I think for Dalton this upcoming weekend because of the student populace of Georgia First teams. I imagine it's well over 50% of the students that are going to be there at Dalton it'll be their first event.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how you get kids hooked, is take them to a competition, have them experience just that environment.
Exactly, and that's where I'm really excited to have a large group of underclassmen that's I think really going to develop some momentum for us here at 1746. But any struggles during the build season?
Not so much for us. I mean, we actually sort of pared back what we wanted to do, right? We knew we had younger students, right? So at kickoff, after we got done with kickoff, we sort of said, what do we want to do? We saw the game. It was similar to 2020, so we knew we could try doing some things. So we sort of looked at it as a way of like, okay, where are we going to stretch in some of our stuff? So they want to stretch in the climb, right? So that if we get there, great. As far as doing more than just a simple climb, trying to stretch a simple climb right now. But it's been really good because they've learned that as they're going through the season, you have to sort of make decisions. You can't have a plan at the very beginning and just say, we're just doing that. And if we're behind schedule, let's just do what we're doing harder, right? You can't push the deadline. And so it's been, I think, a very successful season as far as that. And when we've had a decision of like, how does this impact things? Having students like, our build lead is like, no, this has to get done this week. And those kind of things are really, really good. And I look forward to that. And so no major real struggles, right?
This coming from the guy who apparently Ignite hasn't been able to meet in person until 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
people.
and that's what that's what I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit more of, because I find it such an interesting concept. We've been with 2020 and then 2021 where a lot more teams were meeting virtually to do this stuff. So for me, my question to you is, with you guys only having started meeting 3 weeks ago, with the start of your build and design process, did you feel like it was really a disadvantage, but maybe even more of an advantage where you can just almost focus all your time in those moments of let's get this design down, that way when we get into the building, we're hitting the ground running?
Yeah, so we didn't know when we build a meet, right? We have our own COVID policies, and we have now been able to meet outside for the past 3 weeks. Going through the 2021 season, we sort of already been doing this, where when we went through it, we're like, how are we going to get students to build? And so what we do is mentors would fabricate at the shop, right? And we'd drop off a kit of parts. and they would, our drivetrain was assembled at one student's house, and we'd pick it up, and we dropped it off, and somebody else did the gearbox, right? So when we put our schedule together, we knew that there would be like a pick it up here, drop it off there. There's a day that we have to do that transporting that around. But that we were used to that during the 21 season. We were heavily CAD and doing a bunch of, it works in CAD. We CADed really hard. We have all of our stuff CADed in the subsystems. And so it turns out just after we started fabricating some parts, after our drivetrain was assembled, the numbers started coming down where we could meet again, which was perfect timing because we had a bunch of stuff ready to go. But yeah, it was unique for us. Yeah, I think more than most people, but we were doing it for the past year, so it was very normal to us. Basically what we do is we'd have office hours every night, and so they'd have their task, what they need to get done CADing. Mentors would be on a virtual call. They can come in, ask questions like, how do I need to do this, and get the assistance they needed. So we had those things, and then additionally, they had our sub teams would have meetings the students would have to go and work on their part, and then sync up with the mentors. Could we have gone faster in person? Yeah, but I think overall it was a very good season.
I think that's one of the biggest parts or the biggest things to emphasize in the first program for teams developing strategies. How can we get better at what we're trying to do here? Is use the resources you have available to, and it's awesome to see a story like yours be. You say, all right, we don't have access to shop. All right, what resources do we have? How do we best use them?
Yeah,
So
right.
I'll say this. This is the first time we actually had a robot on the field running, right?
Right.
Before a competition, right? We've always been like, last second, we're getting it together, all the kind of fun stuff. So I'm really proud of this season.
Yeah.
And you guys typically go to Gainesville, right? So how much do you think like not having that week 1 event and doing the week 2 instead helped with that?
That helps some, but and this year's different, right? This year's different in that Worlds, there's a very few number of slots.
Right.
And so we looked at it differently in that if you wanted to go to Worlds, you fundamentally have to be a top 4 bot in the state. You have to be in the finals as a alliance captain or first pick. And we're like, we know we can't design there. We could design here and we could stretch there. So our view of the season was really more of we're improving across the season and iterating. We've gone through some iterations on our indexers and intake. Even though we haven't been in person, we've actually been able to iterate that kind of stuff. And so we look at more of a long upward journey marathon than trying to worry about the one competition. And it's just like, what do we need for this one competition? And that's just a milestone on the way. Again, we'll see what happens at Dalton, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But I think generally this build season, I think, has been a great example of kind of almost meshing and getting to test out the kind of like different work styles that we've seen. The traditional, like you're always in the shop, always going full force, which is always has the benefit. But now we're kind of seeing, like, we're getting to see how can we also get to mix in like the ability to be able to stay at home. That way, for a lot of kids, especially when it comes to high school extracurricular activities, this kind of, even if you can show like, hey, like you don't always have to be there to shop, but we do want you to be able to participate. It's a big way possibly of being able to get more kids involved in first, because then you're not just showing that you have to be in the shop. You can show like you can be a participant wherever you are in some ways.
Yeah, it's awesome to keep people involved however they can. We have, I think, some parts of our engineering academy here or engineering pathway, sorry, at Forsyth Central that have students meet a certain hours requirement, but we have students that'll come in like, hey, I'm not part of that, but can I still participate? I might not be here all the time. And we're like, we'll take you however you can be here, whenever you can be here. So it's awesome to see students pulled in a variety of manners.
And I think with like the advent of the cheap home 3D printer, like teams can manufacture parts at home. They don't have to be on site for anything that they can use 3D printed parts for with like technologies like GrabCAD, Git, and with the new robot simulation stuff out there, like you can be coding and CADing your robot offline, not having to meet in person.
Right.
So all those things really, really help promote different work styles for teams that have different restrictions.
Well, it'll be nice. Speaking of some restrictions that aren't quite at where they used to be this past offseason, let's talk a little bit about week 1. I'm excited beyond belief to get back to in-person competitions.
Yes.
We get to see all the teams we're used to, or a lot of the teams we're used to seeing. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of a downtick in teams due to COVID, but a lot of the usuals will be there. I'm very happy we're competing week 2 instead of week 1. That extra time has been a blessing. Let's talk a little bit about it. For anybody who watched week 1, we're going to do a little bit of conversation on that front. What were your expectations and how did those conflict with the reality that you saw in week 1 competitions?
I thought shots were going to be easy. They were not. Like, bounce outs for a high goal shot were so prevalent. Like, you had to have your shots tuned in. Like, we have the high goal example here, and you have to be able to hit this high goal right for it to, in essence, almost do a swish like you would shoot a basketball. Otherwise, if it hits the bottom in a certain way, you're going to have that bounce out. So it's almost like you have to either allow it to hit the side in a certain way for it to have the right angle, or you have to almost shoot it with 2 balls. That way the balls basically cancel each other out, and then they're basically 2 dead balls and they go straight in.
Yeah, one of the most common designs I've seen has been like one of those shooters with a hooded shooter, right, with just one shooter wheel, and so that's producing a lot of backspin. And in a game like Infinite Recharge, right, that wasn't a huge deal. You had the little polycarb deflector in the back. You had a huge goal that you could shoot into, and the backspin would almost kind of help deaden that against the backing in the goal and let the balls settle. In this game, that backspin is causing a lot of balls to bounce and roll out of the goal, out of the upper hub. Right?
It just messes up cycle times.
Yeah, and especially from distance when the ball has so much more momentum. Like you're putting a lot of power into it, that ball's having a lot of backspin. It's just bouncing out of the goal.
Yeah, what I saw when I was watching South Florida, you really wanted to be on the top half of the back. If you got below that middle ring, you're really risking, even if you don't hit the bottom, it comes down and goes across a short distance, has a lot of momentum still, and it's popping back out.
So basically you're saying, like right about here in essence, it needed to be bottom here?
You want to hit high or low?
High.
You want to hit basically this top half right here.
Yep, on the back side.
Yeah, so like if you're shooting, so Kyle, if you want to demonstrate again.
Yeah, of course. So
standing there, you're shooting against the opposite side in the upper part of the goal.
Right. So you want to basically hit right about here. And then that way it can, when it bounces back, it's able to basically rebound on the other side in essence, and then it can go down.
Just don't hit up high and hit at a high angle. You want to have a little more shallow angle.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that especially if you're shooting from distance, you have to be really careful with the amount of spin you put on that ball.
Right.
Like I think that's one of the common things I saw was up close, because you don't have to put as much velocity into the ball, there's not as many bounce outs, but if you're shooting from distance, the number of bounce outs just increase.
Which I think is a big struggle all around, because unless your team has ridiculous amounts of resources and actually built one of these early on in the season for your prototyping, you're only learning within the past week or two that, hey, when I actually shoot this ball into the legit field element, they're all bouncing out. What?
Yeah. We went to Walton the past 2 weekends. We went there and balls were bouncing out because they don't have a real competition system, right? They just have a flat on the bottom, and everybody's just bouncing out. I was like, oh, I checked the field drawings. Oh, there's there's a wheel down there. It shouldn't be a big deal. And then week 1, I'm like, no, they're still bouncing out just the same way.
Right.
We're lucky in that Automation Direct sponsors Forsyth County teams, and they specifically earmarked funds for teams to get field elements or build them. So we were able to grab the kit from Vex. But I think in the future, I would like to see either first like put together a kit, or make that even maybe a part of the kit of parts. Like give a legitimate mock-up of the goal.
That's where I'd be curious
Two
for how much prototyping or design was put into this goal, or testing even, just for first to know if this was an intended side effect of the game challenge, that cargo was going to bounce out like it has been.
And it's also, I mean, if you think about it, this game has been being produced for maybe right about 2 to 3 years. It wasn't that this was just like a last year thing. They've been thinking about this game for a while, and so I would like when I'm looking at this game in the way that it's kind of come out in week 1, it feels intentional. Like there's always an element with first game design where something easy turns out to be very, very, very interestingly hard, and then it changes the meta of how you conduct, let's say, your qualification matches. And we'll talk about later, but one of the teams figured out about instead of going high and then having that chance of possibly having stuff bounce out and everything else and you're messing up cycle times, go low.
That's where it's been insane to see the firepower that came out week 1 for, like, if you look back at our initial show, we made some guesses on how many cargo teams were going to score in PCH, or how many traversal climbs there would be. Sneak peek, they were horribly wrong.
Did we take
some
any
of us.
guesses?
Some of us.
Did we take any guesses on how many teams could solo the cargo RP?
Correct, but our highest guess for the amount of cargo scored in a match was 18.
Yeah, we all failed. We straight up failed.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Which technically is a solo RP if 5 of those were
This
made
is the
not
entertaining part of the discussion.
Exactly. Gosh.
If only the people we were pointing at as fools weren't ourselves.
Exactly. But that's content. Like we build content. That's what we do.
I'm always glad to be wrong on that.
But yeah, speaking back to like the firepower that came out week 1, I think we've seen some incredibly impressive teams. But then the question is, how are these teams going to be improving throughout the rest of the season? So I think those bounce outs is going to be one of the most significant ways teams are going to increase that contributed point value through a match. Because if you're bouncing out 50% of the time, you're losing a huge amount of points for cargo. You can be a really consistent climber, but you can't really improve much there. So you got to spend all your time figuring out how to avoid those bounce outs.
Right.
So I have a question for you guys that have been watching week 1. You know, in the past we've had like teams like the most iconic example to me is in 2019 we had 69-19 with their level 3 climb.
Yeah.
Right, and getting that RP for them was like the way they seeded first, and they won Gainesville that year, right? And so like, how important has climbing been so far in week 1? And are we seeing that the climbing RP is still as feasible for teams to like emphasize on just trying to get that climbing RP?
Well, looking at week 1 events, at least for a couple of them in particular, I imagine this might be a trend across events, but it looks like the hangar RP is more common than the cargo RP.
Right.
Just the sheer amount that there aren't really that many teams who can crank out 20 cargo by themselves, or luck into a match where they're with somebody else. But that's the rare occasion instead of just being able to do it yourself. Yeah, I think if you have a traversal climb and you can't score much cargo, there's very much a place in this game for you. You're going to win a significant amount of matches due to those 15 points you're getting, plus whatever your teammates can put up. But yeah, there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah. Brian, you ran some numbers, right, or you looked at like kind of the averages and median scores?
Yeah, so I was looking at South Florida Regional, Lake Superior, and the northern Minnesota one, I forget what it was. There's 2 regionals in Duluth at the time. And so It turns out that South Florida, the median score, basically the score that's in the middle of all the scores, was 32. And the mean was 34, so those are very close. But Lake Superior was at 46 and for the median and 46.6 for the mean. And Northern Lights was at, that was the third one,
Yeah.
40 and 41.3. It's very interesting because when I was watching South Florida, there were a lot of matches that had single-digit scores. And I went through and looked at some of the numbers. They had 13 of their 140 matches that were single digits. So I think, in Georgia, we're probably maybe going to perform a little better than South Florida. I'm not sure we're going to be at that 46, but I'm guessing somewhere
In the middle.
in the middle, about 40-ish, will probably win you the majority of your matches, maybe an 8-4 kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the more you do of that yourselves, the more successful you can sort of set yourself up. And some teams, as we'll see, do well at setting themselves up later on.
And that's where, 15 climb points is one thing, but then you're also getting your team the majority of the way, obviously, to that hangar RP. So if you can nearly guarantee that hangar RP by yourself, you're getting half a win by yourself without even winning a match.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they're very clearly, if you look at some of the robot designs, that some of them are like, we're going to go do traverse, right? If it takes us 30 seconds, we're going to go there, right? And, it's going to come down to a scoring game in elims. Who can put the most balls in, right? But you got to get there. And so, in quals, you can go either way.
You can.
And so you're going to find those bots that are going to be traversing that may not be as powerhouse as scoring, and they can work on that as the season goes on. So it really gives you two different pathways to go there.
There's almost some benefit in that, too, in having that kind of alliance partner, in that they can go early and climb for traversal instead of the powerhouse team on your alliance that can score all the cargo.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd rather have them scoring cargo to the end and doing a lesser value climb as if a teammate can spend more time climbing. Because if you're doing a traversal climb, you essentially have to get there first.
Yes.
Unless you have very well coordinated climbing lanes.
And the thing about it, when you're talking about, let's say, if you have that third robot that's going to focus on the traversal climb, one thing as well is this game is going to require real defense. And depending on, if we're talking, let's say, going all the way to state championship, at that, or the district championship, at that point, I'm assuming if you're going to have that traversal climb, that's going to get tuned up every single time you go to a district, to the point where when you get to the state championship, it'll be tuned in for the traversal. So then you'll have a robot that's a third robot that'll be able to give you a solid base of points, but then as well being able to mess up the cycle times of those other teams, the powerhouse teams that are going to run those cargo runs and trying to get as many cargo points as they can.
I think when you get to the state championship, we're probably going to see traversals in 10 to 15 second range for a few bots.
So
10
my
seconds.
six bot traversal, probably right. I'll take that. I'm taking that win.
And a 10-second traversal is quick. That's I can see 15, but
So that throws a wrench in things for a lot of teams that are trying to seed high. That if one of those specialty robots that might not be the strongest on cargo sneaks into one of those captain spots, that can shake up a lot for how those powerhouse teams rank up there and have the ability to select each other. So.
look, I mean that traversal at 15 points is still a lot. How much is it to taxi off in Auton?
Well, but if you could instead have two robots so if that traversal robot ranks up there and divides two robots that have traversal and can score cargo all day, you've made the event a lot more interesting.
Yeah,
Definitely.
definitely. Then it comes down to defense and the third robot on those alliances.
So the other thing to note, in the elims, the scores were in the 80s, 75 to 100. So when you get to elims, you need to have some firepower.
You do. Really do. Like you can't, and especially like we're talking week 1. When you go into our week 2 with Dalton in general, Dalton is filled with is going to be filled with teams, like a good amount of veteran teams, a good amount of teams that are going to most likely be fighting with that cargo. So you're going to, like, I feel like if we look at the average scores that you talked about, I feel like we could reach, what was it, Lake Superior?
Yeah.
I feel like we could probably reach where Lake Superior is in terms of those scores by the time we get to the elims in general. I think so.
It'll be interesting to see how smoothly teams come into the event and hit the carpet running with the wheels running. Typically, Gainesville's been an incredibly shaky event because you might have one or two teams that have things pretty well figured out and put in a lot of practice somehow before the event. We've never really been one of those teams. I'm very excited again to be competing week 2, in that it's been awesome to have a robot on the carpet driving around scoring some goals. But it'll be really interesting to see what other teams at the event have any amount of preparedness.
It was, even when we saw who was attending all the different events,
Right.
we knew that Dalton was going to be, it's going to be murderer's row with all the teams that, with their history and how they perform. It wasn't going to get easy, and we saw the game, and it didn't make it any easier. It's going to be a shootout.
Yeah.
True. And then 4481. What do you guys think with 4481? They were at South Florida. They were Team Rembrandts. They had a really interesting strategy that I thought honestly would carry over into the meta for the rest of the season, which is, instead of just high goal, they went low goal and just basically just kept feeding the low goal until they got that RP.
It was really interesting, too, because they were doing it in borderline matches where the score was neck and neck. The other alliance was shooting high goals. That Rembrandts had to score 4 balls for every 2 balls the other guys made.
Yep.
But they did it and got away with wins in a lot of those matches. And it was really cool to see them stick to that strategy and not shy away from it, because they know, hey, we can score 20 balls by our cargo by ourselves in a match. So
if you even look on the screen here, with 4481 being right about...
Hold on. We got some videos loaded.
They're so small. They're like the little velociraptors. Oh, you're so cute.
And then they just kill you right there. Just like they're just banking it right there. So 4481 getting against the fender, and then they just scoop it in. And then it helps because literally you're scooping out that RP immediately, so you know that you have that base for a win. And especially if you're confident that you can have short cycle times, they had borderline matches, but if you know that you know the game well enough that you can create those small cycle times, then it's easier enough to basically say, hey, we're going to focus on this. We're going to get the RP to our other alliance members. Go ahead, make sure that you're focusing on high goal, basically just maximizing your point potential. That way, we both get what we need out of that match.
Yeah.
Nice to have a plan and stick to it.
Yes.
So those guys picked out their strategy and played it perfectly. I believe they wound up seeding number 1. And then did they go on to win the event?
They did. They went with 179, Children of the Swamp.
And I can pull that match up where you can see the finals. So in this finals, in playoffs, they switched to shooting high, right?
Yes.
So.
Because then it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, because you're not going for RP. There's no RP in playoffs. That's a mistake teams make. They think that their special game objectives count still in playoffs. Make sure you read the rules. Make sure that you understand that there is no cargo RP in playoffs. There's no ranking in playoffs. It's just whether you win or lose.
Right. One thing I do want to say though, especially with the game in general, is teams can have what we would call like a heat check, right? You're hitting the shots over and over again. You're getting it, and then sometimes you go on a cold run where you're missing those shots continually. When you get into the elims, when does it make sense to just go ahead and just start running low goals? Like, what's the percentage of missed shots where you just need to go ahead and start with the low goals? Because
Well,
cycle times, what do those cycle times look like that it makes sense to switch over into low goals?
so if you assume you have the same cycle time for high goal shots and low goal shots, right? Then wouldn't it be 50% at that point? If you're making 50% high, you're better off. Or yeah, if you're making less than 50% high, then you're better off going low. But that's also assuming you're 100% at the low.
Yeah, you gotta put a lot of focus into your shooting percentages so you know when to make that choice. All right, we're not hitting our high goal shot. Is it going to be more effective for us to just dump cargo in the low goal and contribute more effectively that way?
Yeah. But Rembrandt's basically benefited from South Florida having a low average, right?
Right.
They were putting their scores a lot of times were around the low 20s, and that worked there. They didn't need much help. But the other districts, the other regionals, when it's another 10 points higher, you have to go high goal. And when you get into elims, when the scores are 70, you need to get as much high goal as you can. And so when you're picking everybody for your alliance, your percentages can be one of it. Because you have to get points. It's not about balls.
And that's where, you have to focus on winning the match before you get that cargo or get that RP.
Yeah.
So it's I think once you get your match list on the Thursday night, is then looking to say, all right, in this match we need to play for the win because we're playing against somebody that's scoring a lot of points. But this other match we have a little bit weaker alliance on the other side, so we can play the numbers there and just go low goal and make sure we get that RP, help ourselves out in the ranking.
Right.
Thursday night? Match list Thursday night?
It happens sometimes.
So, listen. We're lucky, at least here in Georgia First, where we have great volunteers like Ray Sperlin and everyone else that as soon as they can make sure that all of our teams are available, they really want us to have the competitive advantage as a district to have that match list as soon as possible. So I'll give them that credit. They always at least try to get it for the night before, and if not, it's really early in the morning.
I usually just expect it Friday morning. If it was Thursday night, great, but you got some especially the first weeks, who's not going to show up, right?
Sure.
Yeah, with like inspection and everything, usually taking a long time to get teams and through that.
Yep. PSA, do a team inspection on your own robot this week before you get to the event.
Yes.
And if you have questions, look at the forum. It will help you.
The Q&A.
Yes, Q&A is your friend, unless it's for specific things, and the Q&A is not your friend.
So kind of going back to week one strategies, we saw South Florida, we saw Rembrandt's, and like Brian said, at an event like that where the scores are a little lower, they were able to use that low goal strategy to get RPs, rank high, and they still wound up getting a lot of the wins, right? So let's switch gears to Final 2 at the, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Hueneme?
Unime?
Somebody
I'm not
who
gonna try.
lives in that area,
We're just going to call it
please
the
let us
Port
know.
Regional.
The H-Port Regional.
Yeah,
in California.
HP Regional. There we go. Sponsored by HP.
So let's take a look at this one, and this is one of the events where I don't think Rembrandt's strategy works. It gets them the RP, but they are not going to be winning every single match doing that because they're going up against monsters like Citrus and Greybots and High Tide. So let's take a look at this match real quick. This one, both alliances in Finals 2 scored over 100 points, which is just insane in week one.
True. And while we're doing that, can we talk a little bit more and dig a little bit into more of the robot designs that we're kind of seeing from these different teams? Because what I'm seeing like right now is you have a little bit more bias towards maybe a smaller robot, but then you have even here at the HP regional where you have, I would say, mid-size robots generally. You have a couple tall bots there, but generally mid-size, like general constraints. But then what are the types of shooters that they're using as well here at the HP regional?
Well, I know 1678, they don't have a turret, do they?
No turret.
No turret, they just have swerve.
They have swerve turret.
Swerve turret. Yeah, they use a Swerve chassis as their turret. 4414, I think, has a turret high tide. Right?
I'd like to point out an interesting, if you can go back to the beginning of the match once this plays through, if you look at 1678, 1678's the Red Alliance captain, I believe. But,
Which bot's that?
huh? So, all right, well, I can't walk with my mic, unfortunately, but they're down at the bottom right of,
Here, I'll pause it real quick.
so they actually give 4414 the primary spot on shooting more cargo during autonomous.
Right.
1678 actually takes the weak side, and they score their 2 cargo. But what if we can get this pulled up after the match?
Yeah, go back at the start. Yeah.
Yeah, watch what they do after they score their 2 cargo.
All right, so this is the climb. I'm just going to go back to the beginning of the match, and we can see the final score at the end.
So again, 1678's in the bottom right corner for the Red Alliance. So they pick up their 1 cargo, shoot the 2. They intentionally pick up blue cargo and spit it towards their driver's station.
Yeah, that is very
both
smart.
of the blue.
That's really smart. So that is actually an underplayed component of the strategy in this game, I want to say, is that when you're driving in this game, when you have balls on the opposite side in the blind spot behind the cargo, you can't see them. Your drivers literally cannot see on the other side of the hub structure.
Right.
Right? So that is so valuable in autonomous to be able to pick up the opposite ball and just put them in those blind spots, because that's essentially you're making it so that they're going to have to take more time to pick up those balls if they ever need to go and get those.
It's a better form, basically, of starvation, of basically field starvation for them.
These are ridiculously little details that are the reason why 1678's been on Einstein for so many years in a row.
Exactly.
Seeing that come out week 1 is just a awesome detail to pick up on.
So
Yeah.
something else I noticed is that cycle times sort of slow down as the match goes on, because all the stuff on your side is gone, right? So one of the things, it's not a heavy human player intense event or match, right? So if human players sort of track where the balls are going, they can definitely help their teams by guiding, like, hey, we got 5 balls over there, go get them, right?
Exactly.
So that's where you have we were talking about this a little bit strategically. You have one of your alliance's human players on the other side of the field that talking about having them have any hand signals to say, hey, there's this blind spot here. There's either cargo near to the hub or far from the hub behind that blind spot, just to give an indication to your drive team across the field of this is where the cargo is at. We also talked a little bit about putting a webcam on one side of the robot just to have that feed go back to the driver's station. So
Smart.
while you're intaking on the other side of the field, you can catch any glimpse of if there are any loose cargo over there.
Smart. So then, talking from there and going to some of the robot designs. I know in our first show for the year, we talked about, we joked about the fact about don't do swerve.
Our advice didn't stick.
No, it did not stick. Basically, we get content all season, basically, right? And so the thing for me is, what is Swerve, you think, going to bring in competitions like this, and where do you think that Swerve is going to break down, especially when you're talking about a more open field?
Well, so I was watching one of the Indiana district events, right? And there was a team with Swerve there, and they were playing defense. Now, playing defense as a Swerve bot seems like a lot of fun because you can just frustrate any offensive robot and just get in their way. And so I think any teams that may have attempted Swerve and maybe didn't get the rest of the robot working, they will have a good place in this game for playing defense.
Right.
And I'm not sure as an offensive robot if I'm sold yet on Swerve giving you that much more of an advantage over a normal West Coast drive or 6-wheel drive outside of autonomous mode. But
Yeah, I think that's where it can smooth out some intaking that you're more easily able to approach if there are 2 cargo sitting right next to each other of opposite colors, that it's a lot easier to maneuver to the one that's your color to get to that side. as well as kind of minimizing that cycle time by reorienting along the way, which is why I think teams like 1678 didn't opt for a turret, is
Right.
that they're just reorienting between cycles. So why have a turret when we can just be aiming while we're getting back to the goal?
But the thing also with Swerve is if you're going to use Swerve, you also had to have the intake that would work with Swerve. So in the example that you had just said with, you have two pieces of cargo that are right next to each other, and you can utilize Swerve to be able to get that. You need a intake that is well functioning enough to be able to basically grab that singular piece of cargo and being able to bring it in and center it. So utilizing Mecanum wheel intake, utilizing those spacers to be able to kind of help to center that ball as it's coming in and grab that ball specifically. If you're just having Swerve and you just have a normal, just like regular intake, just a normal wheeled intake, then you have the possibility of getting both of those balls. Maybe if you're swerving a little bit too much, then you grab those two items. So.
Yeah. I would say the biggest benefit of Swerve and Teleop is really the ability to avoid defense. And there's going to be, you get a West Coast drive bot playing D on a Swerve, it's going to be hard for that bot to sort of keep up. So it's, you're going to be able to, your scoring potential is really about your shooter, and there will be a lot of defense. This is really a driving game. If you got a Swerve, if you could drive that Swerve, you're going to be able to avoid a lot of defense and get around them.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of pick and rolls. A lot of pick and rolls in this game. Or there should be a lot of pick and rolls in this game if you're wanting to play it right in this open field. Otherwise, it's just going to be, you could honestly just have a pure offensive game. But I want defense to be played. Especially here in Georgia, there is always those robots that are just like, we're going to focus on defense and frustrating the opponent and just breaking down their cycle times.
Well, I think what's going to happen is kind of like with 2019, what we saw was early on teams were attempting to play the offensive aspects of the game. But as we got later in the season, especially at state championships, even before state championships, I clearly remember when I was at the Columbus event, first couple of matches, teams were going offense. By the time lunchtime happened on the first day, teams were already switching over to all right, we have to start playing defense. So I think we're going to see that early on in this qualification season too, just with how open the field is, how limited cargo pieces are. Yeah.
That's where I think there are a lot of transitions that happen between quals and elims at these events. Again, because there's no... Because number one, you're consistently playing with better robots than you've had access to for most of your qualification matches. So your strategy of, all right, there's cargo littered all over the field, I can go wherever for it. You have to have more defined carve-outs there. You're going to be, again, playing against more consistent defense, which is always a thing that, like you were saying, ramps up throughout quals, but hits you hard in elims. So just like 2020, know where your shooting spot is, know how to get there through defense. But yeah, have that flexibility.
Okay.
So, do we want to talk about Dalton next, or is there any other? Do we want to talk about any other robot designs that we saw?
I mean, do we want to talk a little bit about traversal climb? Maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say any interesting design concepts stick out to you guys for watching matches, watching robot reveals, that type of thing for climber ideas?
Honestly, a lot of the designs I've seen for this game, it almost reminds me of 1746 from what's the year? 2013. 2013, where with Ultimate Ascent, where one of the prevalent designs is basically they go ahead and they basically they have basically an elevator type system. Then they utilize their counterweight, and then they're able to kind of slam up on that next bar, and then being able to pull themselves. And so I feel I've seen that design work well for a lot of teams, but then also I've seen it fail a lot of times. Like South Florida, there were a couple times where I saw that design,
and they were trying to go mid-high, and then the final bar, and then what would basically happen is they wouldn't get that final grip, and then they would just drop.
Yeah, we're in for a quite a. I think there was a video from 2013 for a fallen climbers compilation that was put together after the season. That was pretty tragic, but I think we're in for a similar
compilation
viewing treat this at the end of this season for those who take pleasure in watching others fail.
Schadenfreude.
I mean,
but yeah, I think there's some interesting design types out there. I think one of the real interesting parts is the teams looking and figuring out, all right, which one of those is the easiest to replicate and how can we put it on our robot? I think there are a couple clever teams that have figured out how to minimize. I think there's the set of hooks design, kind of like Kyle's talking about, that you have to go from set to set to set to set. That's, I think, going to be one of the most prevalent designs. It might be a little bit slower than some of the top ones, but it's going to get you there.
Yeah.
But then you have teams, I think 125's got one of the fastest. I don't know if anybody's beaten them yet, but they effectively climb up on mid-bar, lean back far enough, and use their total height projection to just reach straight to the traversal bar without even touching the high bar.
wow.
So I think that really speeds up what they're up to.
Yeah.
1690 has a comparable. They use a clever kind of tilt using the truss to be able to do the similar reach just straight to the traversal. The windmill design, I'm trying to think who had.
179.
That's 148. 148,
Yeah,
I think, has windmill design.
148, 118, 179. There were a few of them out there. I think it's one of the cooler ones. I think 179 has some really cool sprung hooks for theirs. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what traversal climbs wind up popping up in PCH, which ones work effectively, which ones pop up on robots later in the season that weren't there at the beginning of the season. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Any other interesting designs there?
I really like the Everybot climber, the 118 Everybot climber for mid-bar, just the way that it's passively sprung, and then you just get into the mid-bar. It's something that every single team can manufacture. The CAD files are available. I think that if teams use that, that's a game changer, because now the mid-bar is the new low bar.
That's why I've heard some struggles or frustrations almost with teams that have just done the wedge climber only for low bar, is that they try coming into the low bar with such force is that they still wind up making contact with their teammates who are already hanging on the mid bar and causing some of those failures we were mentioning. But yeah, make sure you coordinate and work with your teammates and play nice on those climbing bars over there.
I think I saw a playoff match where a team was on the traversal, or it was either on the higher traversal, but they were contacting another team that was hanging on the mid, such that like part of the robot was essentially, it looked like it was being supported, right? And they couldn't give them the points for the high at that point because they were being supported by another robot.
Yeah, I think there's a decent amount of space in that box, but by the time you get 3 robots in there and anxiety developing as the seconds tick away at the end of the match, things happen.
Yeah.
So good to plan out as much as you can and react accordingly when things go wrong.
Yeah. So going from there, let's talk about us with Dalton, which is.
Do you want to talk about the video?
I want to talk about in Dalton because they're coming to Dalton, which means we kind of have to
What
be.
video are you guys talking about?
Spoiling things for our audience.
A little bit of suspense.
It's called a hook, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Teaser.
Teaser.
Stay for after the break.
But I mean, Dalton is coming up 4 days, first event of the Peachtree District. So a lot of amazing teams to come out. So the first question is honestly, what do we kind of expect coming out? So we don't have a week 1. Gainesville didn't happen this time. So now all of our Georgia teams have had an extra week to basically work on their robots. So what do we kind of expect? We've already basically said, we kind of expect the point totals to maybe mimic or mirror what we saw at maybe Lake Superior,
Somewhere between South Florida and Lake Superior.
Yeah. So then what do we kind of expect? What teams are going to be there?
I I think we looked at this a little bit in our kickoff post show, but that Dalton is by far, if you're looking at the historically competitive teams, is the stacked event of the season. What I think is the curious thing to consider in that situation is it's the very first event for all these teams in the season. It'll be interesting to see who comes out with guns blazing right out of the gates.
So, off the bat, we have, our three founding teams, 832 Oscar from Roswell, Georgia, Team 1002 Circuit Runner Robotics from Marietta, Georgia, and then Team 1311 Kellen Robotics, also a Hall of Fame winning team from Marietta, Georgia. And so then we also have perennial powerhouses. If we talk about teams like 1746 Auto from right here in Cumming, Georgia, 1771 North Gwinnett Robotics from Suwanee, Georgia. Then you also have repeat state champs, 2974 Walton Robotics from Marietta, Georgia. And then we have a couple going into the later numbers, then you have a lot of teams that coming from all the different areas, especially even, hometown Dalton, you have 5900, and then you also have Team 6887 that are more and more every single year showing out for Dalton. So it's a deep field that we're dealing with for this qualifier.
And that's where, I think the most interesting part is that it's everybody's first event. Everybody's feeling it out. So it's all about who figures it out by the time elims come around, or if for those who got ahead of the game, who seeds well enough through qualifiers that they get to pick the best robot in the field. Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun show, I think, at Dalton this weekend. I think I don't think it's a bold claim by many who have seen what our robots have looked like over the past few years at Gainesville, but this is the most ready we've been for an event, which is weird to say considering the situations for the 21 or COVID and having such a big rookie class. But it's been really cool over the past week to see things come together, get some time for the driver on the sticks. Smooth out some of our programming and making things efficient. But I think this is the most ready we're going to come into an event for a long time. It's my 10th year on the team, but at that same time, I'm hearing things from around PCH for all these other top teams and having their swerve drives, going after traversals, and it's making me wonder if we played it a little safe. I think we played it. We chose the right things for our team for not going after swerve, not going after traversal climb, but it's making me wonder, are we going to be able to keep up as the season goes on?
That's okay. We sort of took the opposite approach, right? You're all prepared, fine, for the competition. You're not going to be like coming in with a bot that barely moves and then is winning the competition, right? So we're actually going along that route, right? We coming in, we know we're going to be there 2 days. We plan on improving, right? Adding adjustments and stuff like that. We have, minimum functionality we're trying to get going and everything, but our plan is to actually take that time and keep working on our bot, keeping it better, because it's all about the journey to the end of the season.
Right.
There will be some really strong bots there. There are going to be some bots there's going to be a good clump that are going to be really good and just not at the top tier of the 3 or 4 bots, something like that. I think it's going to be very competitive. Yeah, You're going to have some people that are going to overreach and struggle, especially newer teams that go to their first competition and have their first competition issues. We were going to DE and we're like, oh, because I found this out here, not at competition.
That's one of the things I've been happiest about over the last few days is a student will come to me and say, oh, we broke this thing. I'm like, great. Yep. This is where we should be breaking that thing, not at the event.
I think
please
during drive
No.
during drive practice yesterday, we completely sheared one of our intake pulleys in half, and I was just like, I'm glad that it happened here, so we can reprint it and learn from that error. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Break things at home, not at the competition.
Yep.
Yeah.
And be ready for things to break. So bring spares. Come ready.
Make sure you're stress testing your robot at home. Like, have it collide into other robots. Like, this is going to happen at competition. Might as well do it at your shop where you can repair it and make those improvements.
Yes. So, I feel like this is the time where before we pick out
pick which teams to look out for, let's just talk about a certain team that may have found a very interesting theory to go at their autonomous with. So do we want to go ahead and show the video?
Sure. So the past 2 weekends, we've been at DE in Walton. And thank you, Walton. It's a great facility. We appreciate all the time we get there. One of the teams that was there was 1771, and they did some really cool stuff. And they're going to be a good team in general. And talking to their mentors, they gave me permission to talk about this and show the video. So
let's just watch this video real quick.
This is going to be very interesting. So you see 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. See that they did a third ball there, huh?
Yeah.
And right there.
There's 3 there too. So it's a 6-ball auton.
6 balls.
With 2 shooting stations.
So can we talk about rules a little bit? So,
yeah, you want me to pull up the rules real quick?
Yeah, let's talk about rules real quick. Now, here's the thing. This is honestly one of the most interesting examples that we're going to see in this game. And honestly, I think that I've seen in like a couple years of like a very possible way to really like take advantage of this game and really kind of bring a new sense of meta into the game, right? And so G403 talks about the amount of cargo, like 2 cargo max, right? And then robots may not have greater than momentary control of more than 2 cargo at a time, either directly or transitively through other objects. And then it goes through the examples of the control of cargo. Now, the one that we kind of want to talk a little bit about maybe is, is this technically illegal? Is it really?
Well, so you look at G403, right? It's 2 cargo max. Robots may not have greater than momentary contact. I think that's kind of the key word, is greater than momentary control of more than 2 cargo at a time, either directly or transitively through other objects. And so you can see what counts as control there. I don't think there's any debate that they have control there. And if we look at the
It is pretty momentary, though.
It
Yeah.
is pretty momentary.
So
Yeah.
I'll read the definition of momentary in the manual. Momentary describes rule violations that happen for fewer than 3 seconds.
Where in the rules is that?
That is, let's see.
Down in the index or glossary or something, or not.
Yeah, it's on the glossary on page V3. Oh, 134.
Okay, close to the end. I don't have that section pulled up, so.
That's at down the bottom of this section.
Okay.
Page. You don't have 134.
This is just the game
Oh, okay.
Okay.
part.
Yep.
So in the indexer, it's defined, or in the index in glossary, it defines momentary control as more than 3 seconds.
Less than 3 seconds.
Less than 3 seconds. So let's go back to that video and I guess look at the amount of time that they're contacting that there, real quick. I can learn how to control my screen here.
I mean, yeah, as we, as you take a look at this from the first glance.
Yeah, let's
So
go to the frame where they're.
Do the pinning count, right?
Yeah, it's basically the same thing as a pinning count that a referee would do. They've done this similar count with other games.
All right, that's the second ball. So this is where they pick up the third ball here.
So that's at 7 seconds. And at 8 seconds, they're shooting the first one out.
Yeah, so they have no longer access, or they no longer have control of that first ball. So they only have control of that third ball for 1 second.
Yep.
According to this. And then we can look at it for the other one here, right? So they're picking up ball 1, ball 2. Pause. They have control of the third ball there at timestamp 16 seconds. And they immediately shoot. So not even a second of control there.
Right.
Again, pretty momentary to me.
It's very momentary. So I think realistically, it follows the letter of the law. It is
is not going over that 3 seconds. And realistically, in previous games when you're talking about having, more than the allotted amount of game pieces in your own possession, there's sometimes been game rules about the fact of like not using that third one that's in your control within maybe a scoring opportunity. That doesn't exist here. So realistically, 1771 has kind of really worked the system really well because the robot itself working quickly and assuming no failures in terms of subsystems, the robot's working as a perfect pass through for the balls. That way, you're not having to deal with more than a couple seconds.
Right. I'm not sure I haven't looked. I'm not sure they had the word momentary in the past there because I know in 2019, Jan specifically called out that you had your one cargo or whoever that was back then. Was it called cargo?
Still cargo, yeah.
All right, cargo again. That you carried your one. If you had a cargo in front of your station you're trying to move, if you moved it gently off to the side, that was strategic value, and she would call a penalty. But if you just hit it and it went randomly,
Exactly.
right? And so now this rule, I haven't looked at the previous one, but this rule specifically emphasizes momentary control.
Right.
And that's where I think there's a lot of assumption there of teams reading the rules in the light of how past rules have been written. It's very important to read the rules as they're currently written without too much assumption of, well, this is how it's worked in the past, so this is how it's going to apply here. So it'll be interesting to see what other viewpoints people might have on this particular strategy. In my boat, it's less than momentary. So.
Yeah, like according to the letter of the rules, it is less than momentary. I know back in 2020 in Gainesville, our team had a buddy ball auto where 4189 would feed us a ball. And I know this happened more than in like 2 or 3 matches. By the third match, we got called a penalty for it.
Yeah,
right?
We had some programming kinks we were working out, but we did manage to hold 6 power cells in 2 matches in a row and got a stiff warning from the ref that if it happened again, it was a red card. So we swapped our strategy up to take out one of the power cells for the next couple matches, so we couldn't break the rule. While we got things sorted out in the pits, said, all right, we're confident enough to run this. The timing's right that we reran it and didn't hold more than 5 at any given point. But again, that was 2020 rules.
Yep.
These are.
I mean, this is very similar to 2012, right? When you think about Rebound Rumble, same thing that you're talking about in 2019 where you had the Buddy Ball auto. A lot of teams utilize that. We still also, in that game, I think it was 5 ball max, right? And so realistically, it was just what works in terms of the scoring and the strategic opportunity with that next ball. But realistically for this one, I feel like 1771 did a really good job in really kind of breaking down the rules to see what you can see beyond just the normal rules of, you can't have 2 balls. Well, when can't you have 2 balls? Or when can you have maybe more than 2 balls? And how does that work? So I think they did a really good job.
Right. Now, all that being said, doesn't mean there's other rules that may apply to this, right? And so when we get to the competition, it may or may not be called legal. Jan will make that decision when she actually sees it, because right now we're talking about theoretical, right?
Yeah, we're interpreting these rules as teams instead of, as the rules that actually are the refs that actually get to uphold the rules.
Right.
So I wanted to bring up this one point here on that note. For G403, there's a blue box, number B. It says continuous control of 3 or more cargo. So what is the definition of continuous in this case, and does that potentially break?
I would also bring C as well. I would also bring C in that example as well. Frequent control of 3 or more cargo. So let's say, if you try it out, maybe you get it working.
Continuous describes rule violations that happen for more than 10 seconds.
Even better.
Yeah. So you have 10 seconds to control 3 or more cargo in this case. Well, better than momentary.
Well, that rule, right?
Yeah.
But you'll hit the momentary one first.
Yeah. But then Kyle brings up part C, right? Frequent control of 3 or more cargo. And it says an approximate count for frequent in this case if this rule is violated more than 3 times in a match.
So like, if you're thinking about it, let's say let's go during like teleop, right? If you're like, yo, I want to maximize my cycles as much as possible, 2 balls. I already have the 2 balls, and I'm rushing to get to that 3rd ball. If I'm 1771, I have my shooter where I can basically go not wherever I want on the field, but I can go to a good amount of places on the field. And then once I hunt down that 3rd ball, let loose that ball that's already in my hopper out of my robot, and then I'm basically creating really nice cycle times at that point.
Well, I guess I'm kind of concerned, like, will the refs use this blue box letter C as grounds for saying you can't do that 6-ball auton?
Well, so if they're only doing it twice in auton, that would make it legit again, right? Because they're only doing it twice in a match instead of 3 times in a match.
Well, it says here an approximate count for frequent in this context is if this rule is violated more than 3 times. So they're just giving, I don't know if that's just giving an example by...
It does say egregious
saying
examples.
Right. Well, the other thing is, the blue box can't contradict, right? Because it's very clear up top. It says momentary control, right? So that could give you examples of, like I was looking at the B where you're knocking across the field, right? So yes, that's not momentary. It is control, right?
Right.
But that's the definition of control, not the definition of what violates this rule. They're just trying to say these are what these things are, but the rule still stands above.
True.
That's where I think, legality aside, how awesome is it that a PCH team is scoring 6 cargo in auton?
Yeah.
Let's talk about how awesome that is.
Here's the thing. I want to also put it this way. Since you put it that way, right? A PCH team figured this out. So the question is, how many weeks does it take for First to make a statement on it? Or the game design committee just says, let it ride. What's the over-under in terms of weeks?
I think they let it ride because I was shocked when there was a Q&A talking about you can't be supported by a robot. And the question was, can I be supported by 2 robots? And they said, yes, as long as you're not supported by 1 robot at any given point in time. That one, the intent was like, don't be on top of everybody. But if you want to be on top of 2, you're good.
You're crazy, but you're good.
I think they keep it.
It could.
I'm saying they keep it.
I feel like depending on the outcry that you may hear from teams, I want to say that it could be gone by the end of week 2 and by going into week 3.
What's the outcry about?
I would say the outcry is more just so in general, right? And my general policy is when you're talking about playing the game, right? You are playing the game is not just about the robot; it's about the strategy and the mindset behind it. Mm-hmm. And so, for a lot of people, they can't really get their brains around the fact that it's not just about the robot, which literally is like one of the taglines of First. Right. And so, realistically, for a lot of people, it's like, oh, well, if my robot can't do that, then their robot should be able to do that. When the reality is, this isn't as much about the ability of the robot. This is about the ability of the drivers, the drive coaches, and everything else to create a conducive strategy to basically maximize how we do gameplay in this game. And the end goal, I think, for us as a First community should be to be putting out the best product of a game that we can play. And so for me, this is an example of something that would create a reliable good product. But I feel like a lot of people are going to go back to, well, if my robot can't do that, why can your robot do that?
For me, I kind of struggle to wonder why even try to push the rule like this versus like, all right, you have your autonomous path, stop right before that 3rd ball, shoot 1, then pick up that 3rd ball and shoot 2. Like
there's only 15 seconds.
I know there's only 15 seconds, but
I was told they're at about 14.8.
With that, okay.
So if they stop, they're going to lose one.
Exactly.
Right? That's 24 points in Auton.
That's a
Plus
game changer.
Right?
Yeah.
And plus the movement, that's another 5, isn't it?
Yeah.
Taxing, is it 5 or?
I forget what that
I don't
was.
remember.
Yeah, I'm more worried about the shooting part, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, I know somebody made a comment to me like, "Oh, I know what I'm working on now," right? Because if you got the swerve drive, you could do 5-ball swerve, right?
Right.
Right. So this is strictly just a pathing and working on your velocity. So anybody that has a West Coast drive isn't going to be able to do this. Even 5-ball, right? I don't think it impacts. I think it's a nice interpretation. I like the fact that they found it. It's sort of like I forget what the soccer ball game where they went behind
Breakaway
it.
2010.
Yeah.
It's like that's ingenious,
It's-
and they didn't change the rule.
Yeah, it's not a game. It's not like a game-breaking strategy, but it is like it takes it to the next level, especially in this game where the floor. Like you've had how many years of shooting games in general? Like everyone, and we talked about the last show. I feel like at this point it should be easy enough to create a shooting type robot. In a game where the field is deep enough, you have to be innovative in the way to get into that next into that next part of the stratosphere. In 1771, like as funny as it is, whenever like those rule challenges come, they're always pushing to get to that next level. So I feel like this is a great step for them and for PCH as a whole.
Yeah, we're not typically we're one of those teams pushing boundaries a little bit, but since we're not pushing too many this year, it's nice to see somebody else keeping Jan and the ref crew busy.
Exactly.
But
Y'all will have fun with that, ref crew.
Exactly.
But enough with 1771. How about some other robots in PCH?
Yeah. Do we want to show? Well, so the Mechanisms have publicly released a picture on Blue Alliance, so I can pull that up here real quick. So
And-
let's take a look at this.
And so so this is 8736, correct?
Yes.
8736, the Mechanisms, they are a community team. There are a lot of those members that have had previous experience with FRC, with another FRC team that went defunct from this past year. So they want to basically continue forward. And so this is kind of a nod in some ways to the design, to some of those design principles, but there's a lot here that's very different, especially that elevator. It's very interesting to me.
Yeah. So they are a rookie team, but I don't think they qualify as rookie per se in their first rule. I think the number of students with veteran experience. But don't let that number fool you. They went to Cheesy Champs, and as their first off-season event, and all the things they learned there, they applied here. We saw them at DE. They're really effective. I'm really intrigued by the adjustable shooter that's not a hood.
It's not a hood. You said it's two rollers, right? There's
Double flywheel.
Yeah, double flywheel. One that's hidden right behind the limelight right here, and then obviously the one set right here. So I think that will be interesting in terms of being able to give them that shot from anywhere across the field.
Take a look at their swerve drive here. They're using what the SDS was MK4. Kellen,
I'm not sure which. I haven't kept up too closely with the swerve iterations, but they definitely were well practiced at swerve for their robot that they had made during the off season as some practice, obviously. But looks like they carried that over. I'm excited to see. I think one of a handful of Georgia's top teams going with swerve. It'll be interesting to see how well driven it is.
I guess just off the top of my head, this is not a good thing or a bad thing, just something I noticed. Well, you got 2 Neos per swerve module, right? That's 8 in the drivetrain alone. Then you've got, looks like 2 Neos in your indexer system, or is that 1 Neo? Not Neos. These are Falcons, sorry.
Right.
So
Right.
8 Falcons in the swerve.
Right.
Then you've got a Falcon up here for the indexing system. It looks like that's a 775 throw on the intake, but then you've got 2 Falcons up here for the shooter, so that's 11 Falcons?
This is like a
Treat your-
power draw.
Treat your batteries nice, folks.
Yeah. Hey,
Like this.
treat your batteries and your bank accounts nice.
Listen,
Well,
all I'm saying is, at least for Dalton, they're gonna have to, like, this is gonna be an endurance run for them to make sure that they aren't gonna have any power issues when they're on the field. Because I can see, with the power draw that this has, like, if they forget with maybe one match.
well, it's
They-
great. Sorry.
At Walton, they went for 10 minutes straight shooting.
My curiosity looking at this picture is there's no climber on that robot yet. So
Oh, yeah.
Yet.
I'm very curious
Yep.
to see what they come up with on that front. And if they, I'm trying to remember if they had mentioned anything publicly about going for a traversal.
Don't recall.
There was a poll out there, at least. I forget what the response was. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what else they add onto this robot for making some moves.
Yeah. I think I could see them at the very least put on a little passive mid bar on there. It's not trivial, but it's like you can even slap on the every bot climber if you need to and
Yeah.
get those 6 points.
Mm-hmm. Good to have some options.
So, Brian, you wanna to show what you guys got going on?
Yeah, so this one was, we were at D the past 2 weekends. Just to sort of set this up, we are not done. What we have right now is we wanted to get driver practice, right? This is going to be a driver's game, and we really wanted to get that going. So this little clip we're going to play here is us at DE. Everybody saw us there, so there's nothing really secret, right?
Right.
But we have a basically a temporary hood while we get our adjustable hood working. So this one, there is no limelight. Actually, I don't think there's limelight on the bot right now. So all the shots you're going to see are our driver just sort of like shooting from a spot, because that's where that ball would shoot from with that hood configuration. It's just more about
Building in the muscle memory.
getting, drive fast.
All right, so let's take a look at what we've got here from Ignite.
You know what? The first thing I noticed, these are championship bumpers. 10 out
Yes!
of 10 bumpers.
These bumpers look
Crisp.
fantastic.
Crisp.
So we went this weekend, and he's getting even faster than this. So it's really nice to see him, getting really comfortable with the sticks. If you think about a normal competition, you do 2.5 minutes, 12 matches, you might get 45 minutes to an hour playing. And we spent 3 days, 8-hour days at Walton. And so if you get the chance, take advantage of it. It'll make you a better team.
Definitely.
So do you guys have an adjustable hood on that, or is it just a static
Not
hood?
yet. I
Yeah,
think
that
is
one's
the
just,
answer.
that's just a static arc piece right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so limelight is on there. It's just not operational. It's actually facing the wrong way, I think. No, it's facing the right way.
That's basically
But then the thing is, those balls are going in, and the nice thing I always joke, if we miss, they bounce back to us because we got so much backspin, but they're
Yeah.
not popping out.
I think that's interesting. Going off of what we even talked about earlier, that backspin is going to be interesting to deal with when we're dealing with with that high goal. So,
Side note, we're going to have a wheel on our hooded shooter to help, reduce that backspin, but
yeah.
we'll have some on it.
okay.
See, that one just didn't pop out,
Mm-hmm.
even with a flat bottom.
No, I like this robot a lot.
Yeah, I think you guys knocked it out of the park, especially with not being in person until 3 weeks ago.
I've
That's
seen
impressive.
3 robots now, and I don't think any of them have had a climber on them. What's going on here?
Kellen, you want to make that
We
a
have
fourth?
one we'll be putting on. Will it be on for Dalton? We'll see. It's
That's
it's
where
in
I'm-
our plan, right?
That's where I'm trying to remember if 1771's climber was on the robot for.
It
looks like there's some hooks on there.
a
I'm
hook.
okay.
Yes, they got the Tyrannosaurus Rex.
I take it back.
Design.
2 out of our 3 robots.
Now,
didn't I?
so since you guys are all set and are experienced at iterating at competitions, come on over to our pit, all right? And you can, like the old times, just come on over.
Oh wow.
We'll show you how to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll induct you into the auto way.
Just make sure you're ready by elims. That's
Exactly. That's the key. Okay, so we've seen 2 robots. The third robot. What's our third robot for
We've
today?
seen 3 robots so
We've
far.
seen 3?
Oh, yeah. 71, mechanisms, ignite.
Right.
Yep.
4th robot. There we go.
What else do we get?
Well, we can show what our kids have been working on.
Okay.
So I'm going to preface this by saying I'm just in awe and amazed at how this has come together with such a rookie squad and everything. I'm going to gush a little bit about that because this has been in my, I think it's my 10th year of FRC. I don't think I've ever seen something this incredible with this, starting from very little skill and experience, seeing something like this get put together. And it's just amazing. I'm going to show this video first, but there we go. If it can buffer.
As you can see, our robot is competition ready.
Sitting. There you go.
I do really like this design though a lot. I think
Man.
The buffering pattern.
Yeah,
the buffering pattern works
is
perfectly.
great.
Like, look at that.
So we've been right along with everybody else for any of the more recent games and having the experience with a single flywheel hooded shooter. We even had a 2021 robot with the additional roller to reduce that backspin. But we wanted to test out some, and we have our 2016 IRI robot that we even did some good testing with that backspin shot with a single wheel. But we had tested out these are actually 4-inch foam rollers that are used for exercise equipment. That we had on hand from I think they were from a prototype for intaking in 2018 is why we had them around. But we wanted to toss them in there, knowing that in some past games like 2017, if you get these balls to full inflation, there's not a lot of give there. That we wanted to see if we could get any of the compression of the shot into the shooter wheel instead of expecting all that compression to come from the game piece. That may have largely been because of the 2 game pieces first gave us. One was essentially an oval,
Oh my god.
and the other was a round. So we were like, all right, we can't count on consistent game pieces, so let's see if we can get that compression in there.
So for you, Anupam, and you, Kellen, since you guys were more involved with the programming and the actual build of this year's robot, what would you say is kind of one of the I would say crowning glories of this type of design? Because, you guys said earlier, this is like a team that is mostly rookie team members. So this design, while being very simple, is also super effective. So what would you say is kind of one of the crowning things that you guys think really makes this possibly a successful robot in 2022?
I think a lot of it's the decision making behind it. I think if you look at Otto's team arc since I joined the team in 2013, you kind of saw the continual progression of, all right, we're getting better each year, we're getting new resources for sheet metal, or we're getting more mentors, that we're continuously able to keep pushing our goals to say, all right, we want to be competitive at the world level. That resulted in a division finalist performance at 2019. I think we're pretty well set up in 2020 for a similar arc, for again doing some amazing things. But COVID did some things obviously to that. But I think we were still able to make the same types of decisions to say, all right, this is the resource set we have. How can we make the best decision with our huge group of new students? We lost our sheet metal sponsor, so you won't see too many black powder-coated auto robots. Unless things should change in the future, but we're very happy with what we've been able to do. But we obviously kept it simple. There's no turret on this robot. There's no articulating hood.
No swerve drive or anything.
Yeah, no swerve drive. This is all about taking this game down to its basics. We talked about where can we get our safest shot is bumped up right against the fender. So we're looking at layup shots all day, every day. As I've been joking a little bit, we've got another robot here without a climber on it. I can see it sitting over here on a chair to my right, so we're working on it, and we'll definitely have something on the robot by Dalton. But yeah, like Anupam said, very happy with how the season turned out. I think we've made a lot of good decisions. I'm excited to see where the season takes this robot.
I think one of the keys for us, especially, was being able to work in parallel with our 2020 robot being kind of similar to our 2022 robot. We were able to get the programmers kind of to start simulating some of the same functionality that we wanted, like implementing sensors, walking them through tuning PID. And we started basic, right? On the programming side, we were like, all right, for our first autonomous goal is just to move off a taxi. Let's get that implemented on the 2020 robot. All right, let's simulate running a shooting sequence and then taxiing off. And so being able to break kind of those tasks up and then using old robots helped get the software to a point. It was really cool. Once this robot was mechanically together, the software team was able to just quickly test each individual piece of functionality. Now, yesterday we had a lot of frustrations with merging code as every single subsystem was in its own branch, and every single feature we were testing was in its own branch. So they individually worked, but then merging everything, it's always a pain. Those of you who are software engineers, you are well versed with that. But yeah, being able to do things simply and like building, I think in the education realm we call it the scaffolding.
Scaffold.
But scaffolding towards that goal of, hey, we want this autonomous mode that's able to do this. We want the drive to be like this. We want to be able to shoot X balls rapidly and have the robot know that the balls have been shot.
And we're also semi-playing the long game here. We're talking about building foundations for this class of student that if we can train them right, that we can see the benefits of that for years to come. So hopefully we see those payouts as our team starts redeveloping that momentum we had going before the pandemic had started. But yeah, again, looking forward to seeing how we do this season.
All right, we got to be done with all the pleasantries. Let's get to the hot takes. We got to choose robots to kind of look out for at Dalton. What's the choices for my gentleman here?
I'm going to put a stipulation. We cannot choose any of the robots we just discussed.
Dang.
So those 4 are gone.
All right. You know what? I get first pick. Anupam, can you pass me that can you pass me that roller right in the box there?
I can guess what's coming.
Yeah. Okay. Here. All right. In my quest for a goodwill tour, I'm going to choose Team 2974, Walton Robotics. See, here's the thing, right? They proved me wrong with intakes. They proved me wrong. However, they have a plan. They have a plan for 2022. They have a really great robot, looks like lined up. And they figured out the intake. But it sounds like they're going for dual intake. And I got a note from, fellow commentator here on the show, Thomas, who wanted me to mention, Walton, I don't know if you're those guys yet. You just got to one good intake, and now you want to go to 2 intakes. Now, this is coming from Thomas, not from me. Me, Kyle, Fender, I'm a supporter. I'm a lover of Walton Robotics. However, I'm just going to say, don't be like Icarus, flying too high to the sun, okay? Just, let's, I'm hoping that you guys are going to be good for Dalton, but don't fly too close to the sun. Let's make sure there's one good intake.
My question is, if you got 1, you got 2. Why not 4?
Yeah.
There are 4 sides to a robot.
There are 4 sides to a robot.
Or
yes.
you could have an octagon robot and have 8.
Listen, okay.
Now we're talking.
Listen, we're talking, but I don't know if we're talking crazy. So let's, Walton, I believe in you. Just give me one good intake. If you give me 2, cherry on top, but just one good intake. Just remember this. This is where you came from. Okay? You have so much potential. Okay. Walton's my pick.
Brian, you got a pick?
I'm going to go with a bot that has always shown up and played the field. Oscar 832. They always, you may say they might not be the fanciest, powder-coated black steel bot there, right? But they always come. They always rank well, and they always execute what they do.
Mhm.
I'm very interested to see what they do. I think they may be able to sneak one out here. Now, we saw some really good robots, right? So it's not like there's some weak competition, but I'm curious to see what Oscar does.
Okay.
Anupam, you got one? I got a couple I'm looking at.
Well, I guess I have two. Is that okay? Can I do two?
As long as they're not my two.
Well,
I got
first
another one then. If we could go two.
Really, this is mainly because their 2019 robot was just so cool and so unique in how it worked. 5900, the fighting mongooses.
Hometown team. I
I
love
want
it.
to see if they do anything crazy cool like they did in 2019. Like, it would be cool to see them do some sort of crazy traversal climb that's entirely unique that, I don't know. I feel like they're going to come and show us something cool that looks like that's just something that's completely unique. And I want to see them, and I want to see them succeed. And like they've been around for a few years, and it seems like they've built really like an effective program that gets people invested, gets students invested. So I want to see them kind of see what they've brought to the field. Then my other team, I'm gonna go with my buddies 7451, Avenger Robotics. I've gotten to know their new head coach a little bit. He's a rookie to FRC, but he's been like asking a lot of good questions, and they've been kind of invested in FRC as of late. And I think they're going to be fielding a decent robot. They've got their chassis down. They've got their climber was being machined last week when I went and saw them, and they had a shooter on. They had taken it off at some point, but they have all the parts for a good robot, and I'm hoping that they will just kind of keep working on it and come out strong at Dalton. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yep, my two picks. I'm going to throw out a team that's typically had a robot that plays the ranking game. Curious to see how they come out of the gates here at Dalton. 4026. They nailed the ranking game in 2019 with their flipping climb to level 3. But yeah, curious to see what they come up with for strategy for playing this game. I think my second team, I've not seen, I don't think anything of them this year, but they seem like a team with some developing momentum, and that would be 1683, the Techno Titans from Johns Creek. That they seem to be a program that's really got the ball rolling and is figuring some things out. So I'm curious to see what their effort looks like this season. So yeah, they're my second pick.
Yeah, I think 4026. If they do the D like they did in 2019 and just knock out a traversal climb,
Which you can do.
They could wreck some elim scoring.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And like in 2019, they ended up playing a lot of was it one of the district events where they seeded first and they were the defense robot on their alliance, right?
That was it Dalton?
State?
I feel like that was. That
Wasn't-
may have been Dalton.
Yeah, it wasn't Gainesville.
No.
I think it was Dalton.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see like what type of strategy they use, if they want to go back to that, or I know in 2020 they were gearing up to do some shooting, but
I like it. Okay. What other choices? Any other? So I got an insider's tip. One robot we should be looking out apparently for is possibly 1002, which I thought was very interesting. They have a project called Project Rain. So we'll see if Project Rain works out. Big fan. And we'll see if Project Rain works out for the season.
we'll see if it makes it rain cargo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's it.
Any
All right.
last thoughts?
Yeah, any particular items, anything competition related, team related, excitement you're looking for at Dalton this week?
Make sure you look at the Georgia First communication about Dalton. This is a mask mandatory event. And I don't want to hear any political opinions about this. CDC may say right now that, you know, if you're not in a high-risk area based on the number of people in hospitals and how those capacities are, you're okay to not wear a mask indoors. But as Connie said in her email, they're bringing lots of people over to Dalton from all around the state. Some counties are in that high-risk area.
Right.
And these events run on volunteers, right? And companies want to make sure that their employees that are volunteering are doing so in a safe manner. So please read Connie's email on that. Don't get all, I know people in politics, you get emotional, but read Connie's letter on that to understand why they're making it a mask mandatory
Yeah,
event.
I think it's a good call. And then also, let's be honest, it's the same thing we're doing in general. Like, if we do what we need to do now, then later on we'll be able to kind of hopefully be able to do this without masks, without everything else. But for us to be able to do that, we have to be able to do our part right now. So
I look at it this way: we get to have teams there. It's open to the public, right?
Yes.
Right.
So lots of rookies. All the parents bring some earplugs.
yes,
It will get loud.
I am a loud person. I will be emceeing, so that is very true.
Yes, and Thunderstruck will again.
It will play, and I will be very happy.
That's one of those things that I miss is hearing Thunderstruck and Roy's voice to start the day.
It's going to be an interesting time. And then I would just say to all the teams, all the participants, I would just say, I would say keep a open mind and just be ready to have a fun time. This is your moment. This is your time to shine. You are the athletes in this case. You are the superstars. So be ready when you get to Dalton. Like, you have this opportunity to show what your team is made of. So don't waste that opportunity. Don't waste your shot.
That's where I'll spin off that and say I think a lot of our viewers are likely more experienced students or mentors. If you're in the position where you've been to an event before, make sure you take the new people under your wing and show them how to experience the event, either talking to other teams about their robots, learning how they went about the design process, ask all the questions you can, get in the stands, watch some matches. Like Kyle was saying, get the most out of the experience and help others get most out of the experience. For those, again, there's going to be a huge amount of people that this is their first event that they've been to. So,
and we only grow as a district when we allow that. We are part of that rising tide. A rising tide lifts all ships. And so if we can make sure that, for a lot of these teams, it may be their first event. We have how many rookies that are coming here for their first event?
I think there's seven rookies.
Right about 7 rookies.
7 rookies total this year. I think for this particular event, we're looking at 5 of them.
1, 2, 3,
Exactly.
4, 5,
And the thing about it is, if we can show them a good time here at Dalton and even just building out those connections with them now, then when it comes time for 2023 or even later in the season, we're not going to be losing these teams. So it's important now. A district is only as strong as those weakest links. We can be a great district, but it depends on us being able to build the district from top down and making sure that all of us have the opportunity to be able to be as successful as we can. So take that opportunity as you go into this weekend. Show your gracious professionalism and be the best you that you can be.
I know students have had a lot of fun so far this year. Trust me, events are even more fun than you've already had. That being said, teams come in and need help. If you need help with programming, build, anything, if your bot does not move or whatever, there is help available. I know you can go, a lot of times Connie will direct people to different teams that you need help in specific skill to get the help there. We are there to help you. It's part of what FIRST is. There was one time one of our programmers went to a team and wrote all their code on the second, so before their first quals, so they can get out there and drive. And that's the goal, to get you out there having fun. On a housekeeping note, and I'm hoping that this is still true, are you going to have the flat panel TVs at the end so they can see the scores for the coaches?
I'm not sure yet. I'll be hopefully working with Scott and the rest of the AV teams to make sure about those setups, but we hope to have basically a similar setup, basically what we have with Grits, with maybe a couple changes. That way teams will be able to have that viewing wherever they are, basically.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure that that we get the best viewing experience for the people in the pits and people in the stands.
All right. Well, I'm sure we'll have more thoughts, opinions, views, hot takes for you on next week's episode, looking at a review for the Dalton event, a preview for Columbus is week 3 or Carrollton.
Columbus.
Columbus. All right. So look forward to that show coming out next week. But yeah, again, it's been great talking with you all about robots. It'll be exciting on Thursday to get to play with robots again. So that's it for this show. We'll see you next time. See you in Dalton.
Anyone want to take a shot into the
I
hub
would.
real quick?
Yes.
Yes, we got to end the show on
Yes,
a-
we are going to end the show. Not what we were talking about, but that could work. There you go.
Here,
There you
we'll
go.
all do
I'm
one,
giving
so-
you. All
All
right.
right, we'll all do one at the same time and see if we have any bounce outs.
All right. Let's go. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
All right.
Hey-o.
See y'all next week.